So this session is being recorded. Welcome, everybody. My name is Rachel Rigoli. I'm one of the advisors in the Study Abroad office, and this session is how to handle your money abroad. Thank you again for being here today. So these are the topics that we'll be discussing. We are going to go over using your credit and debit cards abroad, foreign currency, i.e. using cash, protecting your money while you're abroad, opening a local bank account abroad, and then finally managing your money. And then at the very end, we will open it up for questions. So the first topic I'd like to talk about are credit cards. So we don't require that you have a credit card, that you take one for study abroad. So it's not a requirement, but it's definitely a good idea. And the reason why it's a good idea is you may have an unexpected emergency where you need a little bit more money that you did not anticipate. And something that I can think of would be a medical emergency. So you may have insurance, health insurance on your program that requires that you pay out of pocket and then you get reimbursed. So hopefully nothing happens to you going abroad while you're abroad, but if for some reason you do have a medical emergency and you need to go to the hospital, having a credit card would definitely come in handy. If you do take a credit card while you're abroad, we recommend that you set up a fraud alert system. And so what happens is credit card companies are monitoring your use behind the scenes, and they may see that all of a sudden you're overseas and you're charging something and it looks very strange to them. And if you have a mobile alert system set up, they can either text you or email you and they'll confirm that that charge is valid. And you can say, yes, the charge is valid. Go ahead and process that charge. So it's a good idea to have that system set up before you leave. So you'll want to call your credit card company to find out how you can do that. The other tip that I give students that are going to be using credit cards abroad is don't use it for cash advances. And the reason being is when you use your credit card at an ATM machine to get cash out, they charge typically a large amount, either a high percentage or a fee for that service. So you're going to want to use your debit card in ATM machines abroad and use your credit card just like when you're at the grocery store or purchasing something in a store. But it's not a good idea to use it for a cash advance. Depending on where you're going, the country that you go to study abroad may be very cash-based. So like Japan, you're going to want cash on hand, while other locations may be very card heavy. So I just got back from Italy and I never actually took out euros while I was in Italy for 2 weeks. I used my credit card and my debit card everywhere I went. So you're going to figure that out when you arrive. And so if it's cash based, obviously you're going to not be using your credit card as much. But if you're in Europe, my guess is they'll be pretty card heavy. The other recommendation is that you stick with Visa and MasterCard as the credit card that you take with you. I know Discover and American Express are options for you, but they typically are not as accepted worldwide. Visa and MasterCard are what is most commonly accepted abroad. So that's what I would stick with. If you don't have a Visa or MasterCard, you could look into getting one before you leave. You'll also want to find out, and this is a biggie, if your credit card company charges a foreign transaction fee. So if you already have a credit card, you'll want to give them a call and find out if there is an additional charge to use your credit card abroad. So a lot of credit cards will add 1 to 3% onto your purchase overseas, and it's called a foreign transaction fee. And if you're going to be using your credit card quite a bit while you're studying abroad, you don't want to pay 1 to 3% every time you use it. So you want to give them a call, find out if they have that fee. If they do, then you can look for another credit card before you leave. I would certainly just Google credit cards, no foreign transaction fee. There's a lot of information online with suggested credit cards that are great for traveling. And you certainly have time to get a new credit card if you need to. The other thing I would recommend is that you get your PIN for your credit card. It's now really a tap and go system, it seems like everywhere. But if you're asked for your PIN, you want to make sure you have it on hand. And I know I said not to use your credit card for a cash advance, but in case of an emergency, let's say, your wallet is lost or stolen, you have no other means of getting money and you have your credit card and you need to use it at an ATM machine, you'll need your PIN number. And you do have to ask your credit card for that PIN. They typically will mail it to you. So you need to make sure you do it early enough before your departure. So now talking about debit cards. Debit cards are the most common way for our students to access their money abroad. And that is, you want to make sure that you've thought out how you're going to use your debit card when you're studying abroad. You need to ask about the fees that are associated. The reason being is your bank may charge fees for you to use it overseas if you're going to an ATM machine that is not your bank's ATM. And so let's say you have a Wells Fargo account here in the US and you're studying abroad and there's no Wells Fargos in the location that you're going to, you're going to be using somebody else's bank's ATM. And that means there could be withdrawal fees charged not only by your home bank, so Wells Fargo as the example, but also the bank where you're taking the money out of. So you want to ask about fees and you want to make sure that you don't rack up a bunch of fees while you're studying abroad. So call your bank, find out what the charges are, because it's something that I do have a recommendation for you for avoiding those fees, but find out what the fees would be and you can then decide if you're comfortable paying those fees or not. Also, you want to ask if your bank has a sister bank where you're going. So I've had students tell me that Citibank or Bank of America will sometimes have sister banks in the country where they're going to. So I had a student tell me that B of A works with, I can't remember which Australian bank, but they work with an Australian bank and you can use those ATM machines free of charge without incurring fees. So when you call your bank, that's one of the questions that you should ask them. You'll also want to make sure you know what the exchange rate is when you're using your debit card for the first time when you land in the airport. If you're going to take money out when you first arrive, you're probably going to be tired and you may go to the ATM and not really think about the exchange rate, and you pull out money and you find out you only pulled out $20 worth of cash. So you look at Google, or I'm going to recommend a currency converter app that you can put on your cell phone. So make sure you take a look at that before you arrive or access it when you land. The other recommendation I have for you, if you're using your debit card to manage your money while you're abroad, is make sure that if you take out large amounts of cash, that you immediately go back to your apartment or your dorm or wherever you're living, because you don't really want to carry around a lot of money. So my recommendation is you do limit the amount of cash that you're going to be carrying around. You may have a housing deposit or have to pay for your housing and they want it paid in cash. I'm thinking of Japan again. And so if you do take out a significant amount of money, make sure you don't carry it around. Make sure you take it out when you know you're heading home. Other suggestions and advice is be aware of your surroundings when you're using an ATM machine. So if you're going to use, withdraw money at night, make sure you're somewhere that's well lit. There's people walking around, that you're not, isolated. I always recommend that you go into the bank. So if it's during the day, if there's an ATM machine inside the bank, that's always safer. Or some places will have enclosures where you actually just swipe your card and then you go inside to use the ATM machine. So just be aware of your surroundings since you are in another country and maybe not aware of, if somebody's maybe watching you withdraw cash. Also, you want to make sure you know what the daily limit is for your bank account using your debit card at an ATM. So your bank will set a limit on how much cash you can take out per day. So you'll want to find out what that limit is, and you can actually ask them to increase that amount. So let's say you can only take out $200 US per day. Maybe you ask to make it 300, because if you think you are going to have to take out large sums here and there, you'll want to know what the daily limit is. The other thing I recommend is that you have a backup plan should your debit card be stolen or lost. So if you're primarily using your debit card on a day-to-day basis, you need to have a backup plan. And that backup plan may be just you have a second debit card. So maybe you have a second bank account that you really don't use all that often, but you bring it with you for study abroad and you leave it in your dorm room or your apartment. And that way, if for some reason you lose your debit card or it's compromised for some reason, you still have a backup with you. The other recommendation, and this is personal advice, is make sure you test your card before you leave. I've had this happen myself where I got a new ATM debit card before I left on a trip, and I forgot to test it out. And then I ended up having issues with it while I was abroad. So you'll want to test it out, make sure your password works okay. Just go to the bank, take out $20, make sure it works okay, and then you know you're all set before you get on the airplane. So I talked about the fees and making sure you call your bank to find out what kind of fees are involved to use an ATM machine abroad if they don't have branches in the location you're going. I highly recommend you consider getting a Charles Schwab debit card if it's something that you're interested in. I have the link here. You can just also Google Charles Schwab high yield checking account. The last time I checked, there wasn't a set amount that you have to put into the account to open it. I think I opened one with $100 US. The reason why I recommend this card is they don't charge fees for you to use your debit card anywhere in the world, even the US. So it's actually quite popular with college students to use this debit card while they're at college, because then they can go to any ATM machine they want on campus or when they're out and about. I use this card personally. I can tell you that they don't charge you fees. You may see charges because the local bank where you withdrew money, they charged a fee, but Charles Schwab will actually refund that money to you. So it really is an amazing card. Just to let you know, it does take some time to open. So you don't want to wait until 2 days before you leave. So it's something you want to do well in advance. So moving on to some tips and advice regarding credit cards and debit cards abroad. I just said this, make sure you plan ahead. So it does take time to get a new bank card in the mail, whether it's a credit card or a debit card. I know that I opened a Charles Schwab account for my daughter who studied abroad in the fall and winter quarter. And they were hit with a lot of college students applying for this card right when I was applying for a card for her. And they were just backlogged. So make sure you do it as soon as possible. If you decide to get the Charles Schwab card, they do have to mail it to you, and that can take a week as well. And then if you decide to apply for a new credit card that doesn't have a foreign transaction fee, you have to go through the application process and get the card in the mail as well. The other thing is you need to let the banks know that you're going to be traveling. So this is for all your accounts, whether it's your debit card or for your credit card. I know I have Capital One. They don't charge a foreign transaction fee. I always call them and say I'm traveling, and they say, well, we have a chip. We don't really need to know, but it just makes me feel better to know that I've informed them. So make sure you let the banks know where you're going, when you're going, and not just for your study abroad program, but if you're going to be doing weekend trips or traveling before or after the program, make sure you let them know where you're going to be. So that's really important because you don't want your card, to be frozen while you're traveling. The other thing I wanted to mention is, and this is sort of only thing that's ever happened to me in England, but I've been asked multiple times when I was traveling in England, when I made a purchase with a credit card, they asked me if I would like to be charged in the local currency or in US dollars. And the first time it happened, it really I was like, oh, that's a weird question. Local currency, I guess. I had to think quickly. The reason why you want to pick local currency is because you want the exchange rate that the bank set for the day, not the restaurant or the shop or whoever's asking you that question. You don't want them to set the exchange rate, because I can tell you right now, they're not going to probably give you a good exchange rate. So if you get asked that question, which is pretty uncommon, just always pick the local currency, because the banks will do the exchange rate for you. I mentioned earlier that it's a good idea to have an idea what the exchange rate is. I recommend an app called XE. They also have xe.com, but you can put the app on your phone. It's really easy to use. And so if you're out and about and you're not sure how much to withdraw at the ATM machine, or you're buying something and you want to quickly use a converter, the XE app's great. You can also just use Google as well. You can put that in a Google search and it will pull it up for you. So more tips and advice for you. I did this one recently on my last trip. I added some extra, I have a couple credit cards. I'm an adult, I have a bunch of credit cards. So, and other, multiple bank accounts. And I added those cards into my Apple Pay. And the reason why I did that is because if the main debit card or credit card that I was using was, again, lost or stolen, then I could use Apple Pay to purchase things, until I could get a replacement card. I don't have an Android. I assume Google Pay is the equivalent. You would put the cards that you don't typically carry around with you. And that's in the event that the card is lost or stolen, that you still have something to use, while you're waiting for the replacement card. Also, and then this is personal experience again, make sure your card doesn't expire while you're abroad, because your bank or credit card company will send you a replacement card. And this happened to me. I didn't realize, and I was traveling and my card expired, I think in August, and I could no longer use it. So check the expiration dates. And you're going to want to make copies of everything, of all your cards and the phone numbers and all that. So when you get your cards out to make copies and to leave with your family or trusted friends or individuals, take a look at the expiration dates. The other thing that I recommend is that you add your bank and credit card apps to your phone. And this is really handy. So I use the app all the time. And if you are, like, let's say you can't find your debit card, it's in your room or apartment, but you don't want to report it lost or stolen. You can go into your app and lock your card, and then you can unlock it when you find it under the seat cushion in your couch or whatever. You can also usually add travel notifications through the app as well. It's an easy way to do it. So definitely have the apps on your phone. It's really nice to access all your banking information that way. So let's talk about foreign currency and cash. This question usually comes up, and that's about whether you should take the local currency for where you're going to study abroad with you. Have it on hand when you get on the airplane. And it really depends. I typically don't carry foreign currency ahead of time. I usually use the ATM machine at the airport when I arrive. But if it makes you feel more comfortable, certainly take out a little bit of cash for the location where you're going to. You're going to need to contact your bank to find out if they have that foreign currency on hand. And if they don't, they'll have to order it for you. There is a fee involved for you to purchase foreign currency through banks. So there is that added cost. And that's why I usually use the ATM machine ahead of time. But it's really dependent on what your comfort level is. If you feel like you'd like to have 100 euros in your wallet before you go, by all means, talk to your bank and order those ahead of time. Don't take a lot of cash though. I once had a student tell me that they were going to take like all their spending money in cash. And I said, absolutely not. Because if that cash is stolen or lost, you're not getting it back. So make sure it's just, a little bit of money in your pocket if that makes you feel more comfortable. But you can certainly get the local currency when you arrive at the airport. You'll see exchange counters when you get to the airport. Those are not usually locations where you want to exchange money. They're businesses. They're not going to give you the best exchange rate for your US dollars. So I always recommend you use just the ATM machine when you arrive at the airport. And a tip is, if you're worried that maybe you'll get there and you can't find an ATM machine, go on the airport's website. So if you're landing in Heathrow, go to the Heathrow Airport's website. Airports have websites, believe it or not. And you can see a lot of times they'll list the different services in the airport, if they have banking and ATMs. they'll list the food, all that kind of stuff. So take a look at that as well. But all the major airports are going to have multiple ATMs as you go through the airport. So I want to make sure that you protect your money while you're abroad. This is really important. So I already mentioned the mobile alerts for your accounts. So not only do you want those mobile alerts to confirm a charge that you're making so that the bank knows, yes, this is an okay charge, but you also want the mobile alert in case somebody gets access to your account. And so you can say, no, this is not a legit charge. Do not let it go through. So make sure you set those up before you leave. And then I think I already said this, but don't carry around a lot of cash. You'll want to make sure you just have a small amount of cash with you. And if you do need larger sums of cash, I think I already said, take it back to your apartment and leave it there. And then don't carry all your cards around. Like if you have that second debit card, don't carry it around with you. Leave it at home. That's your backup. If you take 2 credit cards with you abroad, leave one at home. So carry only what you need with you. The other thing I wanted to advise you is to make sure you keep your wallet and your purse safe. So you'll want to keep it in front of you. So don't put your wallet in your back pocket when you're, on the train or metro or whatever. Make sure it's in your front pocket where you can feel it. Not a bad idea to keep your hand on it. And then for those of you who would be carrying a purse, make sure your purse is zipped up and don't have it behind you or on the side. A good friend of mine was just in Milan, Italy, and got pickpocketed her first day in Italy, believe it or not. And she was on a metro train. It was not crowded, and they work in teams, and she was distracted, and they put their hand into her purse and got her wallet. So this, the image at the top is a money belt. If you don't know what a money belt is, it's something that you can put under your shirt or under your pants for like your passport or your money for safekeeping. So some people will just have their wallet or purse with just what they need access to quickly, and then they'll put the other items in a money belt to make sure it's hidden and secure. And then the purse that I have here, this image here, is a brand called Travel-On. There's a whole bunch of different brands that you can look at. I actually have this purse. This is what I used for Italy on my recent trip. And you can see that there's little clasps, so you can lock the zipper. There's multiple little pockets. The strap can't be cut, and I just sort of sling it across me, and I have it right in front of me. So I got that on Amazon. It's a really good brand. The other recommendation is if you're going to access your bank accounts or use your credit card or debit card online, make sure you're using a VPN, especially if you're out and about, like if you're at a coffee shop. Make sure you're on a secure network. So, hotels using the free Wi-Fi, not usually a secure network. In the airport, not a secure network, etc. So be aware if you're doing anything with your money and you're online, that you are on a safe network. And then check your balances regularly. And that's again why having your banking apps on your phone are really nice, because you can take a look to make sure everything's looking okay. So local bank account. Sometimes students will ask us if they should open a local bank account in the country where they're going to study abroad. And it can be quite difficult. Sometimes it's very bureaucratic, a lot of paperwork. So unless you're studying abroad for at least a semester, or definitely a year, you'd probably want to consider a local bank account. It usually doesn't make sense. So if you have that Charles Schwab debit card, you have a credit card that doesn't have a foreign transaction fee, you have some backup cards, you're going to be fine, especially if you're going on a global seminars program for the summer, you're gone for 5 weeks, you're not going to open up a local bank account. So, so we usually don't recommend it. They'll talk to you about that on site. If you're going on a semester or year-long program, they'll go through whether it makes sense to open a local bank account, and they may actually help you set it up, especially if there's a bank on campus where you're studying. If you do open a local bank account, you want to make sure that you check with them that there's no monthly charges, so there's no surprises there, and that there's no closure fees. So like if you're only there for a semester and you open up a local bank account, could they charge you fees to close it? Every banking institution's different, and the rules, vary by country. So you'll want to ask that question. So the other thing that is a more recent thing that's happening, I think mainly in Europe, is online banks where there's no physical bank to walk into. And these are online banks that you can open up an account. I know they have them in Italy and France and some other European countries. I don't know so much about Asia or other locations. You can ask when you arrive in country for your study abroad coordinator. They may even talk about it at an orientation. They're usually pretty easy to open up. You'll get a local, debit card that you can then use at banks in that country. But again, I'm not sure you are going to need it. So you may need to set something up depending on how you pay your rent or whatever, but you can certainly ask about online banks in your country at your orientation. So managing your money, you're going to have to think about how you're going to handle your money. So if you're using, like, let's say a Charles Schwab bank account and debit card, and you run into any kind of issues with it, like for some reason it's not working or whatever, I mean, you can certainly pick up the phone and call the 800 number on the back of the card. But if you want someone to be able to take care of issues that might arise with, your bank or your credit card company, I would suggest that you look into doing a power of attorney. And a power of attorney is a legal document that gives a trusted individual the right to act on your behalf. So you can look online for free power of attorney templates, and you can specify the dates, the person who has the authority to act on your behalf, and you can even specify what they have the authority to do on your behalf. So you can say banking only. Or you can just give them a general power of attorney. So if there's any other issues that happen while you're abroad, they can act on your behalf. So it should be a trusted individual that is going to be handle your matters, well, and there's not going to be any issues. So look into a power of attorney. You'll also want to think about how you're going to get money into your account. So if you're on financial aid and you expect money back after your tuition and fees are paid, you're going to want to make sure you have a direct deposit authorization on file. So that way the financial aid office can put the money into your bank account. Now, maybe your financial aid money goes into your Wells Fargo account, but you're using your Charles Schwab account abroad. You'll want to make sure you link those two accounts. Sometimes it can take time to add a bank account where you can transfer money between. Sometimes you have to do like the trial deposits and all of that. So make sure you think about how you're going to move money around and where that money is going to be and where you need it to get to. If you're a UCAP student and you are on financial aid, make sure you do the direct deposit authorization form with EAP, because they are going to be handling your financial aid. The UCSD financial aid office transfers it over to them. So you'll have to do a new direct deposit form. Also, you want to make sure you create a budget for your study abroad time. So think about, using websites like Numbeo. That website will show you what the different costs are for common things like a bottle of water, a sandwich, an apartment, etc. And you can get a general idea what the costs are. And then you could track your spending. There's a lot of great apps out there. I was recommended Mint. I'm not personally using it. You can certainly do a Google search, but it's a good idea to keep an eye out on how much you're spending per month, because you don't want to get to the end of the month and realize that, you were so excited about buying clothes in the country that you're studying abroad, or you are eating out a lot more, and you get to the end of the month and you don't have the money that you need. So using a spending app is not a bad idea. The other thing I want to mention is that depending on where you're going, like if you're going on a semester program or a year-long program, depending on your visa, you may not be allowed to work. So if you're used to working while you're a student here at UCSD, you want to find out if working is allowed on your visa, because if it isn't, you need to make sure that the financial resources that you have, that you're budgeting them out for the entire time you're abroad, that you won't be able to pick up a part-time job while you're studying abroad. And then the last thing I would recommend is that you use that bank app to keep checking your balances. Keep an eye on what how much you've been spending. So now we're going to stop the PowerPoint, and I would like to open it up to questions. Let me just stop sharing with you. So I saw a few things come into the chat. Feel free to go ahead and unmute yourself and ask a question, but I'm going to go ahead and answer Ethan's question. Would a traveler's rewards card prevent this? Ethan, do you mind expanding on what that question was about? If you could put it in the chat or unmute, whichever you're comfortable with. And then we'll go ahead and move on to the next one. I'm confused. If you get money out of the ATM in the airport, will the ATM do the currency exchange? Yes, absolutely. That's what happens is there's a international exchange rate, and I don't know how it works, but they know what the exchange rate is for that day. And when you take the money out in local currency, your bank will put it into US dollars, and you'll see that if you go into your bank account, let's say you take out 100 yen, you may see like $2 or something we're taking out from your US bank account. So they'll do the exchange for you. Also, for those of you who have never used an ATM machine abroad, you do get to choose the language. So don't worry about if you don't speak the local language. It will ask you if you'd like to proceed in English or the local language. So you'll get to pick. Oh, I'm sorry, it's saying it's not allowing you to unmute. Let me see if I can change that 1 second. Okay, hopefully that made that change. So Ethan, did you want to unmute? I also see that you expanded on it. I can just read it if you like. I haven't. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Ethan.
All right. I was saying, like, I have an account with Chase.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm not able to get the Charles Schwab card, how well would a traveler's rewards card work instead?
So it really is going to depend on, I mean, it should work fine if it's a Visa or a MasterCard, but you just want to find out if there's any fees involved for you to use it abroad. So I would call Chase. I know some of the Chase credit cards don't have foreign transaction fees, but you just want to give them a call and say, I'm traveling, I'm going to be spending a semester in South Korea. Are there any fees involved for me to use my credit card abroad? And their lingo is foreign transaction fees. So every card is different. Some of the Chase cards may have a foreign transaction fee, some may not. I know Capital One, typically all their cards don't have a foreign transaction fee. That's something that they like to market. The next question, is it cheaper to exchange in the US, the ATM, the country I'm studying at? So if you're trying to get local currency, you're going to need to do it in country. You're not going to be able to go to a US ATM machine and get, Korean won. You're only going to get US dollars. You can get foreign currency at a bank, and you can contact your bank and ask them if they have that currency on hand. If not, you can find out about ordering it, but there will be fees involved. So I would suggest probably just waiting until you get to the airport if you're okay with that. So it looks like that was the last question. Oh, Brenda just asked, so just to recap, it's better to make the second bank account with Charles Schwab and have your spending money on there. You can move money between your regular bank account in the US and the Charles Schwab, but yes, you're going to want to use your Charles Schwab more on the daily basis. That's what you're going to be using to take money out of the ATM. That's what you might be using at the point of sale. Like if you're at a grocery store and you want to swipe your debit card. So that could be a secondary bank account that maybe you don't normally use when you're a student, but that I would recommend that becomes your primary account while you're studying abroad. Hopefully that answers your question. And you're going to have to make sure you are able to get money into that account if that's not your normal bank account. So that's why I said linking your account, or if your family is helping you, maybe linking, a parental account where they can drop money into the Charles Schwab account for you as well. And then that power of attorney is going to give somebody, the authority to call Charles Schwab if they need to do something for you. You're welcome, Brenda. Any other questions that you might have?
I have a question.
Sure.
Do you know if there's any tools that help us kind of generate a budget, or like, help us save this much money for food, save this much money for travel and stuff like that?
I think Mint is really good about having you track your expenses, and I believe you can actually set up a budget for yourself. What I would recommend is that you look at your study abroad programs budget, and that would be a good guideline to try and stick to, because the budgets that we create typically are sort of middle of the road, what a student would spend on a daily basis. And then I think it's a personal, choice. You thinking about how much you want to spend on food versus clothing versus travel versus whatever. So if you're somebody who knows that they want to travel while you're studying abroad, maybe you decide, okay, I'm going to eat out less. I'm going to cook more and, at home. Or maybe you're a foodie and you really want to experience all the local food and you want to be able to eat out all the time, but you don't plan weekend trips, while you're studying abroad. I think the key is to really decide what's important to you, how much money you have, and just sort of track it. So it doesn't, so you don't get to the time where somebody's asking you, oh, let's go here for the weekend, and maybe you spend all your money eating out that week. But I would check out the Mint app. It's come highly recommended.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? I think that might be it then. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. If you have any additional questions, feel free to reach out to your study abroad advisor here at UC San Diego. Thank you for joining, and bon voyage, and we will see you soon. Bye.